Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is the podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 49, Pen Pal. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Fran receives yet another letter from her first grade pen pal, Lenny, who tells her that he will be in New York and wants to have dinner on Saturday night. This causes Fran to panic because she has greatly exaggerated some details of her life in her many letters to Lenny and worries that he will be disappointed upon meeting her since she was not the fastest woman on earth, an astronaut, nor a stand-in for Miss America. Maxwell, forgetting that he had asked Cece to work on Saturday night, decides to escort Fran to the Russian tea room to meet Lenny so that she can see that he's no better than he is, or, as he corrects himself, she is. Just as Fran and Maxwell are walking out the door, Cece arrives dressed to the nines, ready to work, and thinking that she's going to seduce Maxwell. In Maxwell's absence, Niles takes advantage of the situation and gets Cece to cluck like a chicken because, as he pretends to be Maxwell, he says, it turns him on. Fran and Maxwell sit at the bar and enjoy the time alone while waiting for Lenny. Fran mistakes a guy from the band as Lenny, only to learn that Lenny came and left without introducing himself because he felt he couldn't compete with the gorgeous guy she was with. Fran assumes he meant David, the guy from the band, but Maxwell realizes it was his presence that scared Lenny off. Back at the house, Cece and Niles become short-lived drinking buddies, ending with a passionate kiss, which is interrupted by Fran and Maxwell, who then have a moment where a kiss appears inevitable. Instead, however, Maxwell is thinking about taking a shower and going to bed, while Fran is going to bed thinking about him taking a shower. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you got it.
Thank you. Would you then like to take us to the kitchen in scene 1?
Yes. So, as you mentioned, we open the episode in the kitchen. Fran's there, and Niles comes in kind of from the side saying, anything for the post office? And he elaborates, Miss Babcock's corporate tax return must be file marked by the 15th or she'll face substantial penalties. Fran notes, today is the 16th. Niles, what's your point? Classic Niles. I knew as soon as he said a date that it would be after the date.
Of course. Of course.
Anyway, so Fran hands over to Niles a letter and he notes, oh, another one from Lenny. And we learn heretofore unknown that
Correct.
Fran has a long-term pen pal starting from first grade. Again, it's Lenny. And, Niles is surprised that it's gone this long. And Fran's like, oh, well, Val also had kind of a long-term, pen pal until he lost his appeal. And Niles takes this to mean, like the appeal of writing or like the person or something like that. But Franz corrects him. No, he lost his appeal. They fried him at Leavenworth.
Correct.
So yes, a very different type of appeal.
Yes, very much so.
Yes. And I think Niles makes a quick comment about there's an Easter seal on the envelope. And Fran's like, oh, nobody looks at that. In walks Maggie and Gracie, and Maggie is spraying a lot of perfume. And before Fran notices that it's actually Maggie who's spraying this, Fran's commenting on how terrible the smell is. And then, of course, sees Maggie and changes her tune. Maggie, I believe, sits at the table. Brighton comes in at some point and makes the comment, because Maggie is trying to use the perfume to attract men.
According to Gracie.
According to Gracie, yes. And Brighton makes the snarky comment, who, the Orkin man? And we see kind of Fran in the behind Maggie light a match in an effort to try to, kind of counter the smell coming from the perfume. And we learn that Brighton has a new girlfriend. And of course, Maggie has to make the snide comment. Oh, does she fold out and pin up to the wall like the previous one? And Fran kind of also makes a little comment. Oh, great. At this rate, you'll be married before me.
Right. Even you'll be married before me.
Even you'll be married. And And she kind of makes the thing like, who's the little tramp after your father's money?
Right.
And we learn that Brighton's girlfriend's name is Veronica. And in third period, she leaves him a note, I believe. And then fourth period, he leaves her a note. And there's no physical contact. And so Fran, of course, makes kind of the comment, oh, it's working for Michael and Lisa Marie, the no contact kind of thing. And of
Right.
course, this is kind of like a mini, um, it kind of is reflecting the whole pen pal situation Fran is
Hmm.
in with Lenny. Like they've never had contact before. Um, but but yeah, that's the opening scene. Do you have anything to add to that, Debbie?
The only thing I want to say is just how much perfume Maggie was spraying,
Oh yes.
because it was just like comical.
Yes. It's like you do not need that much perfume.
Correct. Like if you recall, I think it was back in season one, the Nuchschlepp episode, Fran and Maggie were getting ready to go on Maggie's date, and Fran showed her how to put makeup on, a drop on each wrist, a drop, you know, between the eyes, etc. Maggie is totally disregarding that advice and is just like spraying the room indiscriminately.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Okay. Well,
ridiculous.
yeah. Will you take us to the living room then?
I'd love to. So in scene two, we go into the living room and we see Fran is sitting on the couch and the TV's on. We hear this like soap opera like music, and Fran's watching her soap. Oh, Autumn, what are you doing? You're throwing your life away, and for what? That Schmendrick Owen? Oh, this isn't even my soap. She realizes and changes the channel. And then she's watching this new soap. Oh, Summer, what are you doing? You're throwing your life away. And it's the exact same cadence with a totally different show, which obviously is the joke. Cece comes in and she basically is like, "Why are you watching this? The soap operas are ridiculous. The plots don't make any sense. The plots are ridiculous." And immediately thereafter, she's like, "What's going on?" Like Cece takes an interest in the soap opera. And so Fran explains, "Oh, she's hopelessly in love with her business partner. Only he doesn't know she exists." And Cece's like, "Ugh, what a loser." Maxwell walks by. "Hello, Maxwell." He doesn't acknowledge her, doesn't look up. He's like now looking at the mail over by the front door. "Maxwell." And then that gets his attention. "Oh, I'm sorry, Cece. I didn't notice you there." So Cece
Mm-hmm.
turns back to Fran. "So what's going to happen? Is she going to get the guy or bash his British head in, or what?" And Fran explains the background of the show. "Well, he asked her to work late tonight, and she's going to seduce him." And so Cece gets very excited. "So we'll find out what happens tomorrow." And Fran looks at her with one of her priceless Fran fine looks. "Tomorrow? This is a soap. We'll be lucky if 6 months from now that coffee she's making is ready." And of course, by this point, Maxwell has wandered back over and he says to Cece, "What are you doing Saturday night?" And Cece's sort of like kind of blasé, but says that her cousin Gigi needs a transfusion and my blood type is, "Wait, why?" And he's like, "Oh, never mind. I just thought we could work. But, under the circumstances." And Cece's like, "What's the rush? I mean, they gave her 6 months."
Mm-hmm.
And so she walks out, and Fran makes a comment behind her back that if she were Jewish, her last name would be Iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so meanwhile, Maxwell, had been going through the mail before, and he's like, "Oh, here's another letter from your pen pal Lenny. Do I detect a hint of a strong, hideous cologne?" And Fran's like, "Yeah, your daughter just left, but on the bright side, no more silverfish."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so Fran, opens the letter, and Maxwell's kind of talking to her, and it seems to the audience that he's a bit jealous of Fran's, shall we say, involvement with Lenny. And he comments about how whenever she gets a letter from him, she makes this ridiculous grin. And like we see her, she has this huge grin on her face, and she makes this like sound like as she opens it because it's a letter from Lenny. And so he asks, trying to get information, "What does this guy look like?" And she's like, "Oh, I have no idea. We never exchanged photographs. And that's probably why he stood by me through my fatal attraction with Ben and Jerry." And Maxwell kind of makes a comment about how he's seen pictures of her like that at her mother's. And anyway, she's like walking and she's looking at the letter. "Oh, now I'm nauseous. He's coming to New York and he wants to meet me for dinner at the Russian tea room." And Maxwell's like, "What? The Russian tea room is bad because waiters dressed like Cossacks give you the creeps?" And she's like, she like hems and haws a little bit, but then she explains that she's afraid to meet him because over the years she may have stretched the truth a bit. And this is one of those things, they do a really good job of switching back and forth between the scene we're in and like what she means by what she has communicated to Lenny. So like, for example, we learned that she lied and said she was the fastest woman on earth and got a gold medal instead of Flojo. We learned that she told him that she was a bit more popular than she really is, and it cuts to a scene of her on David Letterman, who makes the comment about nothing says debutante like a leopard skin cocktail dress. She explains to Maxwell that she doesn't do daytime.
Because no Oprah.
Exactly.
I don't do daytime.
And so Maxwell's sort of surprised at her, and he says, "Well, what possessed you to make up all these things? What are you always telling the children?" And she's like, "Don't wear white shoes after Labor Day." And clearly, that's not what he was getting at. And he's like, "Okay, what am I always telling the children? Miss Fine works too hard. We should send her to Club Med." No, to tell the truth. Oh no, I think I told him I was on that show too. And I think that's the point at which Brighton comes in. "Oh, Mayday, Fran." And he explains that things are over with Veronica, who stayed after school to meet him. Things are over because he had told her that he looked like Brad Pitt, and he doesn't. And so Fran's reaction.
Well, he kind of does it, and I don't. He does like, how would you describe his voice at that point? It's like
whining.
Kind of, yes, like a high-pitched whine, and I don't.
Yeah, it's like defeatist and depressed, and like he sort of should have seen that coming, right? Yeah. And Fran says that she was surprised at him, and then like she like slaps him playfully, and he leaves, and Maxwell's giving her a look, and she's like, "I said I was surprised at him. I had to lie to Lenny. A guy like that wouldn't be interested in me without the Olympics, Letterman, and my career." "Oh, you told him you were a nanny?" Close. And then we find out she actually told him that she was an astronaut, because it cuts to a scene of her in a spacesuit putting lipstick on, and the lipstick floating away because there's no gravity.
And saying, "Houston, we have a problem."
Correct, which I look forward to discussing with you when we talk about our notable New Yorkers. So, yeah. I sort of went into probably way too much detail, but would you like to add anything?
No. Like you said, it is kind of well done, like the little jumping back and forth between like Maxwell and Fran in the living room, and then the little scenes of her getting her Olympic medal, and again going on Letterman, and then later in space. And you have to wonder, did Lenny even like believe any of that?
That was going to be what I was going to ask you. Like, at some point, it's just ridiculous.
Okay, like even without like the full like kind of like social media, internet kind of stuff we have today, those are the types like you would see in the news.
You would see the news or TV Guide or something.
Yeah. So anyway, next scene, we're in the office. Niles and Maxwell are in there, and Maxwell's kind of indicated, okay, I'm going to give Miss Fine a ride to the Russian tea room. And then he kind of makes up an excuse. And he is like, "Suitcase, I'm going to bring this to my attorneys." And Niles points out, "Your attorney's nowhere near the Russian tea room." And he's like, "Then I'll get a new one." Same place I'll get a new butler.
Exactly.
And so they walk into the living room together, and they're, Maxwell's actually like dying to see Lenny. He goes to the mirror, starts kind of messing with his hair, and asks Niles, "Oh, do you think he still has his full head of hair?" And Niles sardonically behind him is like, because he's looking in the mirror as well behind him, "No, sir, you're the fairest of them all." And then we learn that Fran's still upstairs getting ready. And this is where we get into a fun little conversation between Maxwell and Niles. And I'm probably going to butcher this, so feel free to jump in.
Okay.
But basically, what Niles says is she's upstairs getting verpitzt.
All verpitzt.
Okay.
Yes, you got that one right.
And then Maxwell kind of looks at him, and is like, doesn't that mean confused?
So
Wait,
yeah,
okay,
it starts with Maxwell asking, so basically like, where's Miss Fine?
yes,
Niles says she's upstairs getting all verpitzt. What does that
yes,
mean? You know, sir, dressed.
rest.
I thought that was
Oh yeah, far.
for
Okay,
blungit.
you're gonna need to help me here, Debbie, with the
Sorry.
Yiddish.
Yeah, I thought that was for blungit.
And that means confused. Oh, I thought that was
Fakakta.
okay. Then what does
Then what's for schemmel?
yes? I think that's her uncle.
Right. And like, thankfully at that point, their attempts at understanding and communicating in Yiddish end.
Yes, because Fran walks down the stairs and they say, I believe Maxwell says how lovely she is. And she's like, oh, but I'm so far schwitzed.
So close. I'm all for schwitz. For schwitz.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Yiddish is
Like,
one of those.
quickly trying to write these down. And I'm like, oh no, this is not going to work.
Yeah. I also think like the closed captioning doesn't get the spelling right. So even if you like try to use that,
Still won't get it.
Yeah. I don't think so, because like they're using A's and R's in places I wouldn't. Like I would use E's, but that's just me.
Yeah. So anyway, we can tell that Fran's pretty anxious. She is looking in a compact. She noticed something on her chin. Oh, I hope that's an eyelash. And then she pulls on it, and oh, it was, but you can tell it was not. And she
Correct.
asks Maxwell, okay, tell me the truth. If you're expecting Grace Kelly and I arrived, would you be disappointed? And he asks, literally Grace Kelly? Yeah. Then yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Clearly the wrong answer.
Clearly the wrong answer, to the point where Niles says, you're going to need help. You forcooked it up, sir?
I think you forcocked it up. Yeah.
So Fran's now saying, oh, she's not going to go. But Maxwell's like, no, I don't want to hear about this for the next 20 years, which, side note, aw. He's expecting to be together for 20 years. Like, the children will clearly be adults.
Correct.
No, you're going. And and again, you kind of mentioned it in your summary, but he's like, no, we got to go so that you know that he's nowhere near as good as I am. And Niles corrects him, you are. Oh, please, would you please? And then he realizes, oh, like, Niles is right. You are.
Correct.
And again, Fran's still hesitant and says, maybe I can let him know that I had to substitute for Miss America. But Niles quickly points out, that's what you said in your last letter.
Correct.
And of course, Fran's like, of all the Rosa Lopez's in the world, and we have a domestic with total recall.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, Cece walks in the door. Hello, ready to work? And again, as you mentioned in your summary, she is all dressed up.
What is she wearing?
It's like I believe it's sleeveless black floor-length dress.
And talk about the neckline.
Kind of like I'm not too great at that, but it's low cut.
It's a sweetheart neckline.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, it has no sleeves, it has no straps. And to me, it's like it's hanging off her chest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it does not fit well.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, but she's clearly trying to do the whole soap opera storyline of seducing,
Yes.
Mr. Sheffield that night. And Fran, she gapes kind of at and Maxwell, meanwhile, is kind of oblivious, and he's just like, oh, I'm gonna drop Miss Fine off. Cece, can you start working without me? And of course, Niall says she can, and she has.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Go ahead.
I was just going to say the line is, Cece, I'm heading out for a bit. Can you start without me?
Yes.
There's no mention of work in
Yes.
that.
She can and she has.
Correct.
So yeah. Do you have anything to add to that scene?
No, I just want to again reiterate Fran's wide open mouth expression and Maxwell's total oblivion, because
Yes.
it's so notable.
Yes. Yes.
So they leave, and then the next scene is outside the Russian tea room. And it's a very short scene, but Fran and Maxwell are together, and Maxwell's trying to reassure her, telling her that there's no reason to be so trepidatious. And she's like, I can't help it. I'm nervous. And she's like, thinking he means that she's sweaty or something, but trepidatious, she's nervous. And then she's like, well, what if he's not as accepting of me as you are? You've seen me at my absolute worst. And he's like, yes, I have. And instead of her response being something like, yeah, and continuing her rant, she's like, when? And he's like, I mean, your absolute worst is absolutely lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kind of looked, and like, that's such a sweet thing for him to say.
Mm-hmm.
And her reaction is less than sweet by telling him that there's a pooper scooper law in the city. And so anyway, he's like trying to like get her, corral her in, and they have one of those revolving doors. And so they get into the area of the revolving door together. And she's like, quit pushing, quit pushing. And he like comes closer to her. Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add anything?
Nope. We are now in the Russian tea room, and they are sitting at the bar. And, Fran's telling Maxwell, oh, he doesn't have to sit with her and wait. She's a grown woman. And of course, next to her on the, is a man who kind of has the assumption, I guess, is he's Russian. He
I
kind of has
believe so.
an accent, and he says, hello, girl, sweetest pudding. And so Fran kind of says loudly to Maxwell, and she kind of adopts this like more masculine pose. Well, my wife was pissed, but I felt trapped in my old body.
And she
And the man, of
strokes her
course,
chin.
yeah, and the man immediately stands up. And side note, I don't know
Yeah.
how he feels about that. Not great. But also, you know, she was trying to get him. I don't.
She wanted to get him away.
Yes, and succeeded, but still. Okay. Anyway, so Maxwell asks her if she would like. I
An
don't know if it
aperitif.
an aperitif, and she's like, "No, I'll just get a before dinner drink," which
Is an
the same.
aperitif. Yep.
Yes. And so Maxwell orders 2 champagne cocktails. And, Fran's impressed. And she notes that, when she and Val are out, they just wait until like men get up and then they take their drinks. And Maxwell's kind of taken aback. You drink other people's drinks? And she's like, no, we just hold it. You need to have a drink in order to get in for the free buffet. Have you ever gone out? And then anyway, Maxwell informs Fran that, back in his day, uh, he was Jack the Lad in my day.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Everyone goes through a curiosity phrase. And of course, Maxwell pulls a face because that is not what he meant.
Correct.
And then she's like, well, at least I'm not like that broad over there, desperate, boozing it up. And you can see Maxwell's kind of puzzled look. And then Fran's growing realization as she starts looking intently, doing certain motions. Oh my God, it's me. Because she was looking in the mirror.
Yep.
Yep. Anything to add to that scene?
No.
Okay, so take us to the office.
I'd love to. So we cut into the office, and Cece is clearly setting her trap, if you will. She has, food on Maxwell's desk on a silver platter. She's lighting candles. She puts a VHS into the TV to put on a video of a fire burning, and like her back is to the door when the door opens. And she doesn't turn around. She doesn't know who it is, but she says, "Maxwell, darling, is that you?" And we see it's Niles, because Maxwell's still Fran. And as he's turning the light off, shh, don't turn around. And then he, walks up behind her and blows on her ear. And she says, I'm yours. Tell me what you want me to do. Because like the first part is higher, then she like drops her voice. And
Mhm.
Niles gets this great look on his face. He like cocks his eyebrow and thinks, cluck like a chicken. What? It turns me on. And so she does. She clucks like a chicken. She imitates a hen. She, has her arms as if they're wings and she's flapping them and she's slowly turning around. And as soon as she turns around and sees Niles, um, and Niles just rolls with it. Mr. Sheffield's been delayed. Did you think I was him? And obviously, Cece is embarrassed and um, irritated and angry. If you tell anyone about this, oh, I'd never do that. We need the eggs.
Mhm.
Um, do you have anything you'd like to add to that scene?
Nope. Nope, you covered it.
Um,
So we are
go
oh,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say we are back in the Russian tea room with Fran and Maxwell, and they have like I believe at this point they have quite the array of like food in front of them.
They do.
And they've been obviously kind of been there for a while, drinking, that kind of stuff. And France, talking about how she feels kind of out of place, it's been so long and, you know, at a bar stool, that kind of stuff. And Max was like, "Didn't you go out last night with Val?" "Oh yeah, that was the last time I went out."
Right.
And then she notices two women kind of at the end of the bar checking Maxwell out. And and she tells him, "You're not tied to me if you want to go kind of work the room." And and he kind of jokes as a throwback to before, "No, if I do, you might take my drink."
Right.
And she's kind of impressed by that he so smoothly kind of brought that back in. And it calls him a suave bola.
Mm-hmm.
And then she asks him, "Oh, do you have any pickup lines?" And he's like, "Oh, well, my first pickup line is Maxwell Sheffield, Broadway producer." She's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, what's your second? How do you like your eggs?"
Yep.
And she's like, "Oh." And then he's like, I must have mentioned Lenny, and she goes, "Lenny who?" Um, and she's clearly just enjoying her time with Maxwell. And she
Mm-hmm.
she mentions, "Oh, we rarely get out without the kids. We should think about hiring someone." Oh, yeah. And yeah, he jokes too. "Oh yes, I've been and thinking of hiring a nanny." And
Exactly.
then she goes, "I have a little confession." And we learn she doesn't care if Lenny doesn't show up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so and then but it's funny because at that moment a man walks in
Correct.
and he has a rose in his lapel, which is important because there he is. He's gorgeous. Go home.
Exactly.
A quick about face for Fran. And he's like, "How do you know?" Like, and, you know, "Are you into dark Mediterranean, well muscled from the docks kind of look?" And, well, she explained, the red rose. They had each promised they would wear a red rose, and that would be how they identified each other, sorry. And
Yeah.
so she goes up to this guy and she kind of goes, no introduction or anything. She goes, "Don't be shy. Give me a kiss." And she
Exactly.
like sweeps her, like does full on kissing just right there in front of Maxwell. And Maxwell kind of like tries to interrupt, like, "I'm Maxwell Sheffield." And he says, "David's
Stavros.
and obviously that is not the name of Lenny.
Correct.
So and so quickly, Fran's like, "Oh," she's like, "Why are you wearing a red rose?" And he's like, "I'm with the band." "The nerve of you. Kiss me goodnight and then leave." And he obliges. And she hands and but Maxwell's protesting and she grabs the thing and asks him to jot down his number. And then, turns out must be that Lenny must have stood her up, and she's like, why would he stand up a millionaire woman astronaut who opened for Streisand? And
Right.
the maitre d actually is like, oh, there's a letter from a gentleman who came in. It's for you. And then she reads the letter. Dear Fran, this is the last letter. I saw you with such a great looking guy, and I could never compete with him. And of course, Maxwell's kind of uh
He apologizes.
yeah, because he thinks it's him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, but Fran kind of ignores that. And it's like, what are the chances he would walk in when I was in the arms of David?
Exactly.
Is there anything you want to add to that scene?
No,
Okay, take us back to the living room.
I would love to. So we're back at the house and we see Niles and Cece sitting on the couch, and they each have I guess a tumbler, like a little small glass. And Cece's explaining to him, Niles, I don't make it a habit of drinking with the help. And he responds, I've never been any help to you. Exactly, she says, and they clink glasses and they drink.
Mm-hmm.
She says, so tell me, Rochester, what did you do to kill a day before I came along? And he sort of amusingly adds, well, truth be told, my life was rather empty, but now I have a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And something about that sets her off. She puts her glass down and stands up. I loathe you. He stands up.
Mm-hmm.
I despise you. Servant, trollop, bellboy, brunette. And then they kiss. They're
Make
caught. Yeah, like full on, like passionate kiss. Like the tension has been building forever and ever and ever. And here they are finally kissing.
Mm-hmm.
And they are caught in the act. Because just as they're kissing, guess who walks in the door? Fran and Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And once Niles and Cece break apart, Cece just basically decides to leave. And she says, good night, Maxwell, Fanny 9, and walks out. Doesn't even find her coat, just walks out.
Mm-hmm.
And as she's leaving, she and Niles have one last exchange. She says to him, swine. And he says, chicken. And she leaves. He closes the door. And to Fran and Maxwell, he says to them, good night, people, and just walks out. And of course, Fran and Maxwell are just stunned at what they've come home to. And Maxwell asks Fran, Miss Fine, how much did I have to drink this evening? Not as much as them. And he says, I suppose when two people spend as much time around each other as those two, something like this is bound to happen. And he and Fran are together by the stairs. And she's like, yeah, I suppose it was inevitable. And they're looking at each other and they have this moment. And he says, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And she has this quick moment, what are you thinking? Mm-hmm. And there's a pause. And it's very, very meaningful, charged pause. And then he backs down and says, I'm thinking about taking a shower and going to bed. And he hands her his coat and he walks up the stairs. And she's like, well, what a coincidence. I'm going to bed thinking about you taking a shower.
Mm-hmm.
Which is disappointing for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And that's the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because again, Cece's just like, I loathe you when they start that little exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they don't comment on it to Maxwell and Fran has the same kind of mouth open, gaping expression that she had before she left when she saw Cece in the dress.
Mm-hmm.
And Cece just is trying to leave with dignity, her head held high. But again, she says Fanny 9.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about before we jump into our shticks?
Not really. How about you?
I guess my one thought is in the scene in the office where Niles tells Cece to cluck like a chicken because it turns him on. She just accepted it. There was no other than her first what? There was no I'm sorry, I must have heard you wrong. There was no I would have been surprised if someone I was trying to seduce made that request of me, is all I'm saying. I would have been more surprised.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about, I think. You want to talk about favorite fashion?
Sure. I'll let you go first.
Sure. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is Cece's Maxwell seduction dress. I would not wear it. Would you?
Um, I'm gonna pull up a picture for myself just right now.
I mean, if the neckline were a little bit higher and
Mm-hmm.
like it didn't look like it was falling off her body, I would wear it. But
Yeah, I'm trying to get it because like my impression wasn't as much of like because you said that you felt like it didn't fit her.
it just looked to me like it was like falling off her
Oh, yeah,
breast.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty low down there. I
And like
agree. It needs to
I would be
be,
afraid it would just fall off and that would be
yeah,
terribly embarrassing for me.
yes, yes. Looking at it, it very much is. You wouldn't be comfortable out in that
Mm-mm,
dress. You'd be worried the entire night that there would be
correct.
some.
Like if it was like an inch or two higher and like not falling, I think it would be a great dress.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Yeah.
fact that it's constantly like looks like it's falling off her, and I would, as you put it, be just afraid the whole night, be worried the whole night that thing's gonna fall. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other dress I think worth noting is what Fran wore to the Russian tea room. It's like a black base dress. It's a tank, like it has tank sleeves, and again one of her like shorter dresses above the knee, and it has like a goldish pattern. Um, I'm sort of surprised that's what she would wear to meet Lenny after writing to him for decades. Um, I would have thought she'd wear something a little bit flashier.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I kind of, it's not, this is not clothing, but a big thing I noticed in this particular episode is actually Fran's hair. Uh,
Yes.
because there's like a part at the front part instead of it
Hmm.
being pulled back. Because usually she has her hair at least like half up,
Hmm.
or and there's not a part. But in this, the entire episode, I feel like it's kind of a new hairstyle. Obviously, it's still voluminous, but there's that part at the very front of her hair, and then it's pulled back.
Right. I'd actually say her hair is more voluminous than usual, or it looks more voluminous than usual because of the way it's styled in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was just kind of like a departure from her normal hair look, I would say.
Hmm. No, I
Nanny kind
agree.
of, I think of the two, I prefer her normal hair
Me too.
look, not this one.
Agreed.
Hmm. Anything
Um,
else regarding fashion?
I guess I want to comment on what Maxwell's wearing at the beginning of the episode. He's wearing like a green, gray, like sort of plaid jacket with like gray pants. It's just not his usual chic look, and I don't care for it. I feel like I only comment on his fashion when I'm complaining about it. So, which is, I think, true because if he looks like his usual debonair, handsome self, dressed the way he normally is, like there's nothing to comment on because that's just like the baseline. But I didn't care for that outfit.
Hmm.
So that's
Okay.
all I wanted to say.
So then shall we jump to notable New Yorkers?
Yes, there are a bunch in this episode.
Hmm.
Would you
And
like to start?
yeah, I was just gonna say, so whenever they're talking about Val's pen pal who lost his appeal, Fran says he was fried at Leavenworth.
Mm-hmm.
And again, prison.
Yeah, it's a penitentiary in Northeast Kansas. It's medium security. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. The Orkin Man, his pest control.
Yeah, we talked about them previously also.
Hmm. Um, Michael and Lisa Marie. I think there was a reference to them before, maybe. But it's Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley, daughter of Elvis Presley. I remember they were married for a bit in the 90s.
Yeah, they got married. According to US Magazine, they got married in May 1994.
Mm-hmm. And they divorced at some point. I just don't recall
Right.
how long they were married, but obviously at this point they were still together.
Right.
Um,
While you're looking, there's a reference to Easter seals.
mm-hmm.
That's an organization, and then to quote from their webpage, leading the way to full equity, inclusion, and access through life-changing disability and community services. Fran also references her fatal attraction to Ben and Jerry's, which I think is actually two references. So Fatal Attraction was a 1987 psychological thriller based on the 1980 film Diversion, which is about a married man whose short-term lover becomes obsessed with him and refuses to let him end their affair. Ben and Jerry's, on the other hand, something way less scary sounding. They're an ice cream company that started in 1978. Their famous flavors include things such as Cherry Garcia, Fish Food, and many others. That's according to their website.
Now, Fran made a comment about Smarty Feldman.
Yes.
Did you take that to be a reference to Marty Feldman, the British actor?
That's what I assumed she was referencing.
Okay. Because I can't recall the specific
Context
of the reference, like
so,
how it related to Marty Feldman.
It had to do with the letter that they got, that Fran got from Lenny, and he's like hypothesizing that I don't remember the exact context, but then immediately after she makes a comment about Smarty Feldman, he who wore a skirt to his high school graduation shouldn't throw stones.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, it was a kilt, and she's like, you say potato. Man.
Yeah, and so, for our listeners, if the name doesn't ring a bell, you may recognize him. He was known for his prominent misaligned eyes. So if you ever watched Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein, he played Igor. The assistant. They pronounced it Igor there instead of Igor. But it's a Mel Brooks film. So he was the assistant to Gene Wilder's, Dr. Frankenstein, again, how they pronounced it in Young Frankenstein. So that may be, a place that you might remember him. Did you have anything to add on that front?
I do not know.
Okay. Were you going to talk about the Russian Tea Room?
Yes, I was. So the Russian Tea Room is actually a real restaurant. According to their webpage, it is a treasured, globally renowned cultural institution where people of all ages and backgrounds have been having unforgettable dining and celebratory experiences for 95 years. That's a direct quote from their webpage, which is why it sounds super positive. What I did think was super interesting when I was looking at their webpage, two things. One, from the pictures they have on their webpage, it does look very similar to the scene that is supposed to take place in the Russian Tea Room. So good job on the set. But this is totally going to date our podcast. But their webpage currently has a pop-up that renounces Russia's invasion of Ukraine, adding that the Russian Tea Room has spoken out against dictatorships for the past 95 years, and its founders actually stood up against Stalin. So
wow.
Again, totally dating our podcast for our listeners who listen to this, 10 years from now. But it was interesting to me that they were like, they wanted to make sure that everyone knows they were not affiliated.
So good. And then during this scene where, Fran's talking about how she kind of may have stretched the truth a bit, this scene where she's getting her Olympic medal, FloJo is in second place in that. And she was actually an American track and field athlete. She set world records in 1988 for both the 100 and 200 meter. So she was a popular figure. And she went on to win 3 gold medals at the 1988 Olympics. I don't know if you saw this, but unfortunately she passed away in her sleep.
I did see that in 1998 when she was only 38.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I
cut you
believe
off.
that must have been a brief cameo by her
That was her, yes.
in that flashback scene, because Fran kind of makes the thing, oh, don't worry, Flojo, Silver goes with everything.
Right.
So, and then obviously, when she has a flashback where she's on the David Letterman show, David Letterman was for a long time a late night host, and they make reference to Oprah, which again, I feel like most of our listeners would know who Oprah is.
Right.
Um, Club Med.
Club Med, they advertise themselves as the inventor of the all-inclusive vacation package, which includes accommodations, food, transport, etc. That's according to their webpage. Just to circle back on FloJo and David Letterman, they were played by themselves, according to the
Yes.
IMDb page for this
Yes.
episode.
Sorry. Yeah, it was clearly David Letterman. Yeah, it was David Letterman. And probably like his set. Like I would imagine they actually
That
filmed here.
that would make sense because I believe that the Nanny aired on CBS and his show aired on CBS also.
Hmm. Again, Brighton said that he doesn't actually look like Brad Pitt, and I believe we've mentioned Brad Pitt before as
We
a
have,
reference.
yes.
And then whenever Fran is doing her astronaut scene, they're playing the theme from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Um, you know, it's very well known music, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that reference, Debbie?
I knew I was familiar with the music, but I couldn't have told you where it came from.
Gotcha. And then of course she says, "Houston, we have a problem."
So that is actually, I think, one of the most interesting things I've learned in preparing for today's show. Um,
Mhm.
so that's a popular phrase. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone listening has heard the phrase "Houston, we have a problem," but
Mhm.
that's not actually what was said. It's a
Yep.
paraphrased line from the Apollo 13 space flight in 1970, where the astronaut actually said, "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." And then when
Mhm.
asked to repeat the transmission, the message changed to, "Ah, Houston, we've had a problem," not "Houston, we have a problem."
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like the whole Luke, I am your father is not what is actually said in Star Wars.
I didn't
But
know that.
everybody like pop cultural, yeah. Like there are several phrases that like have just kind of in the pop cultural zeitgeist been like changed.
Right. We had another one on a previous episode where Maxwell tells Fran, "Lucy, you've got some splaining to do."
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. But yeah, but like again, we even if it's not actually specifically what was stated at the time, everybody gets the reference.
right.
Let's see here. So yeah, I feel like in that particular scene, like there was a ton going on.
Hmm.
Again, Grace Kelly. Have we talked about Grace Kelly before?
I'm not sure. I think we might have, but just in case we haven't, would you like to tell our audience about who she was?
Well, so Grace Kelly was actually an actress first, an American actress. I'm looking up. She then went on to marry the Prince of Monaco.
Yep. Prince
Um,
Rainier the third, I
mhm,
believe.
yeah. So I believe I've seen some of her actual like um movies that she filmed prior to, maybe like To Catch a Thief was one of them. She films like a couple of Alfred Hitchcock suspense thrillers. Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief. So, but anyway, she retired after she got married. She went on to have three kids: Princess Caroline, Prince Albert, and Princess Stephanie. And she has a dual citizenship, I believe, or she had. She's
Had,
passed away in 1982.
correct.
But yeah, so she was first an American actress, and then she later became, you know, Princess of Monaco. So interesting.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna jump in with you mentioned this line when we were talking about the scene, but when Maxwell is looking in the mirror and Niles is standing behind him, "Oh, you're the fairest of them all." That I believe is a reference to Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or was that Sleeping Beauty? Actually, it might have been Sleeping Beauty. Now that I say that, no, Snow White. It's Snow White. I'm just gonna name all the Disney princesses.
All
No,
the
because as I was like, I don't need to look this up. I know it's Cinderella, and then I'm like, no, it clearly was not. It was Snow White. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Is what the evil queen
that's
says.
another example of what we were just talking about, because everybody says mirror, mirror, but it's actually, I think, magic mirror on the wall.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that's one of those like commonly misquoted. I'm double checking.
Yeah, I'm Googling as well. According to Wikipedia, well, interesting. According to our friends at Wikipedia for the site Magic Mirror Snow White, the magic mirror is a mystical object that is featured in the story of Snow White. Let's see. And then interesting. I'm not sure.
We'd have to like look it up. Like
we'd have to do a lot more research.
Yes, but I think that's because they're claiming it's a Mandela effect. So a certain one says that in the 1937 classic, it's magic mirror on the wall instead of mirror, mirror. Anyway, that was a whole aside. Listeners, you can check it out for yourselves.
Exactly. We don't give homework. We just give suggestions. Yes. So I caught a couple others that we haven't mentioned before. Rosa Lopez. She was O.J. Simpson's maid who, to put it somewhat involuntarily, testified at his trial before fleeing the country. In that same sentence, there was a reference to Total Recall, which was a 1990 science fiction film about a guy with implanted memory of adventures on Mars and people trying to prevent him from remembering more, etc. Rochester. I'm not sure I found the right Rochester, so I found a reference to Edmund Lincoln Anderson, who is known as only by the name Rochester. He was an American actor and comedian, but I'm not sure that's who Cece was referencing.
I don't know, because I immediately went to Jane Eyre.
See that? I knew it Rochester, was not. I knew it was not the Rochester from Jane Eyre. That would make no sense.
Yes, that's the only Rochester that came to mind for me was Rochester from Jane Eyre.
Okay. Lovely listeners, let us know. Let us know which Rochester you think she was referencing.
Yes, you did skip over like the umpteenth reference to Barbra Streisand.
I did. In fairness, I did. Yeah, I feel like we can't go more than a few episodes, if a single episode at all, without a reference to Barbra Streisand. There are probably additional references to her that you and I just don't pick up on.
Probably.
Did you ever think of that? Like,
probably. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that goes over our heads.
Exactly. Without knowing her entire songography or whatnot, filmography. Like, I'm sure we're missing things. But I digress.
So yeah. Did you have any more?
So I'm looking at the IMDb page for this episode, and this is one I did not pick up on until looking at it. The purportedly Russian guy at the bar was played by Peter Mark Jacobson. You're like, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
That was Fran Drescher's husband at the time.
Oh, okay. So that makes it that's funny that he's just like sweet as what was it? Hello, girl, sweet as pudding.
Exactly. Really creepy pickup line. Attempted pickup line.
Yeah, you said it. I was like, okay.
It was creepy. Yeah, I don't
know. In terms of when you said his name, I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, that's why it's notable that he was in the episode. And under trivia, according to IMDb, the man that approaches Fran and Maxwell when they are sitting at the bar in the Russian tea room was Fran's real-life husband, Peter Mark Jacobson, who is also an executive producer of the show. So
nice. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think then that's it. for notable New Yorkers?
I believe so as well.
There were quite a bit.
Lovely listeners, if we missed any, please let us know. You can tweet us or email us.
Now, I know for sure there's a ton of Yiddish in this.
There actually is. I'm surprised, and I hope I do it all justice. So we start with the word schmendrick, which is in the scene where Fran is watching soap opera and she's saying, oh, autumn, oh, summer, what are you doing? You're throwing your life away. And what for that schmendrick Owen? It's a fool, a stupid person, a fool. It apparently comes from the name of a character in a Yiddish play whose title translates to The Comical Wedding. No, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Yiddish name of the play for you. That's according to our friends at Wikidictionary. So basically Wikipedia's dictionary. Verpitzt does mean dressed up. Verblunget is like kind of lost, confused. Fakakta. It's interesting that depending on how you spell it, you get different definitions. Fakakta, to me, it's like messed up, ridiculous. Like one of the definitions I found that spoke to me was like messed up, ridiculous, lousy. For shemelled is sort of, again, flustered, confused, discombobulated. And then for schwitz, I literally found one result on that, and it didn't one Google hit and it didn't define it, but it has the word schwitz in it, which means like to sweat, like I'm schwitzing. So to me, she was indicating that she was sweaty.
Which makes sense, since she was kind of anxious, nervous.
Exactly. And then that ties in with the next scene where she's talking about where Maxwell's like, there's no need to be trepidatious. And she's again, indicating that she's sweaty. And then the last thing was Fran makes the comment about Cece that if she were Jewish, her last name would be Iceberg. That's a common joke, I think. Iceberg as in cold. Berg is a frequent last syllable of a Jewish last name. So yeah, I think I got it all. Did I miss any?
Then looking back at that scene, then Niles was correct?
Niles was correct.
There we go. He's been paying more. He's a domestic with total recall.
Exactly.
And then, so can you repeat though, when he later says you verkackt it up?
You verkackt it up.
Which one was? What does that actually mean? Because obviously, what it sounds like
is you've screwed it up.
Yes,
and that is how I would use it as well.
Okay.
But it's interesting.
Yeah, but what does the word mean? Same.
So depending on how you spell it, like if you spell it the way like Farkatke, you get the results from the Urban Dictionary that it's ridiculous or loud. But if you spell it with an E, kakta, and you drop, I would also drop the first R, then you get the meaning lousy, messed up, or ridiculous. And that's according to gel.jewishlanguages.org, which I would prefer to use because that's, again, how I would use it. Verkackt it up, or this verkackte thing. Like, it's messed up. This thing isn't working.
Yes. Okay.
Yiddish is one of those fun languages where oftentimes the words sound like what they mean. So
fun. Okay. Yeah. So then are you ready for 90s nostalgia?
Oh, I am. There was a bunch here as well, I thought.
There was.
I'll let you go first.
Well, you pointed it out, the whole putting the VHS into the TV to get the fire going in the office. I mean, VHS obviously not really used.
Correct.
These days anymore. I mean, people still have like the artificial fires that they put on the screen, but now you can stream it instead of putting the VHS in.
Right. So on the note of television, I'll mention two things. In the scene where Fran is watching the soap operas, she has a very bulky, old-fashioned looking television remote that she uses to change the channel. And then when they're at the Russian tea room and Maxwell and Fran are looking at David, Maxwell comments about how, because Fran says, he's gorgeous. And Maxwell, as you kind of indicated, was like, oh, well, if you like the well-muscled Mediterranean from the docks look. But then he also says something like, I wish I could lift a crate of rear projection television sets, but unfortunately I need to hire someone to do that. The rear projection television sets are also outdated because I think now everything's, I want to say LCD.
Mm-hmm.
I got the right letters. Excellent.
Or LED.
LED. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was LED or LCD.
I think both of them exist.
Oh, okay, cool. So I didn't make it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're flat screens.
Yes. Because I remember like just how bulky, especially the bigger they got. Just
oh yeah, and so heavy.
So heavy. Yeah. In terms of like the whole pen pal thing, first of all, in general, I think unfortunately, letter writing is not as common these days.
I would say it's a dead art.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure there are still a few people who keep that up, but for the most part, yes, as you said, it's kind of a dead art. Because again, we have so many alternate ways of communicating with people, whether that be email or text message, social media,
phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm dating myself. Well, phone calls.
Oh no. Like nobody wants to talk on the phone, Debbie.
No, of course not.
But so like that whole premise, I feel like is dated, as is kind of tangentially like related to it. How Fran said, oh, we promised never to send each other pictures.
Right.
Well, these days, I think it's common, people would try to look up people, like Google them or look up on social media. So
I agree.
So yeah.
Well, I guess, let me ask you, when you were in grade school, did you have a pen pal?
So in grade school, so I would say, what was it? Second grade, we did this thing where we would actually write to people in other classrooms. And we did this we had a whole like inner grade letter writing delivery system, which was exciting. It's like, oh, I get to send, I get to send mail and I get mail.
Right.
And it was but it was just between classrooms. So I did have a friend who was in a different classroom who we would exchange letters that way. In terms of outside of that, I've never really had a pen pal like that.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I think we must have been in, I don't know, let's say 5th grade. So a little bit later, we wrote to students in the same grade at a different school in our district.
Gotcha. A little more advanced than mine.
A little bit more advanced. And then we had a picnic where we met each other.
Oh, fun.
And then
meeting your pen pal.
It was nice. She was very nice. And then we ended up going to school together, after elementary school, because it was the same district, it funneled into the high school. So we saw each other. I wonder if she remembers that we were pen pals. But yeah, and then I know at other points in my life, I've tried to write letters to people. I haven't gotten very far because it's just so time intensive.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that I love getting letters and stuff. I'm just always terrible at knowing what to put in a letter.
Yeah.
I have trouble even with just simple cards. So
I get that.
It's one of those things I wish I could do it.
I mean, I remember
sake, but
right.
I always feel stupid. This sounds terrible.
Yeah, I mean, for sending cards, I'm just the thing, what counts is that I sent it, right? Make sure you spell the person's name right, put the date, a couple sentences, and it's fine. My guess is most people do not keep cards forever. They see, oh, so and so sent me a card. I'll send them a text saying thanks. The end.
No, No, I keep everything, Debbie. I'm such a sentimentalist. I still have like graduation cards from like high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. I will keep that in mind, and I will probably never send you a card now because for fear that you will
Why?
keep it. That you'll keep it, and 30 years from now, I'll be like, Debbie, look at this stupid message you sent me for
No.
X, Y, and Z. Thank you. I'm adopting your fear of putting the wrong message in a card. Thanks.
No. That was not my intent. Just that I appreciate even simple cards.
I remember at one point, like in college, I was doing a summer elsewhere, and so like my friend and I, we decided to be pen pals, except we were using the computer instead of like snail mail because it was so much faster. I just remember her one comment to me after like, I don't know, one or maybe a few of the letters, the e-letters, I guess emails, was that I said my communication sounded just like me. And I was like, well, I should hope so. I'm the one writing them.
Mm-hmm. Well, a question for you. Like in
Yeah.
middle school, it was like very popular to write each other like letters, but then like elaborately decorate the other side of it. Um,
That
did
was
you
not
like pass notes?
that was not the
Essentially,
case.
again, we're dating ourselves, so with passing notes. But that was like a big thing in middle school where we would write notes to each other and then but on the other side oftentimes we would like write the other person's name in like bubble letters and then like color it in with marker.
I mean, I
um
remember the bubble letters. I'm not sure
yeah.
that was in middle
Again,
school. I think that
we're
was,
totally like dating ourselves.
oh yeah, we're old.
But
Listeners, in case you didn't know, we're old.
yes.
I,
But yeah.
I mean, I remember it being a big deal that people passed notes in school and whatever. I guess I just didn't have enough friends or I was too focused on my studies. I don't remember ever getting notes in class.
Yeah, I still have a couple for middle school. Like I
So
said,
so
I'm
basically you
very
keep everything.
sentimental.
You keep everything. Got it.
Basically.
Got it. I understand.
Yeah, that's me.
Huh.
But yeah. So anyway,
But
any other
yes,
90s nostalgia?
old cars. We see an old taxi, for example.
Yes.
The New York City skyline. We see the Twin
Mhm.
Towers.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. Oh, Fran having David Stavros write his number down on a napkin. I feel like
Mhm.
if that were to happen today, she'd be like, "Give me your number," and she'd whip out her cell phone,
Mhm.
or give him her cell phone number. Either way. Um, and then the happy hour buffets. Like, are buffets back? I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Yep, they
Um,
are.
oh, okay, then scratch that off the list.
They're
Um,
still, yep.
and then you
At
kind of
least in my area there are buffets still.
interesting. And then there's the you kind of mentioned this when she was trying to scare her actual real life husband off. My wife was pissed, but I felt trapped in my old body.
Mhm.
I feel like that's a very dated
Mhm.
comment to make.
Yes. Yep.
So
And again, I think kind of tying into what I was talking about earlier about passing notes, the whole Brighton thing with Veronica is
mm,
kind of a similar throwback to the days when you wouldn't be texting or Snapchatting or whatever the classmate.
whatever the youth do these days.
hmm I feel like even in high school there was a moment where like um yeah, there were two people who did kind of they were in different periods but in the same classroom and they like left a note for each other. Oh, that's taking me back. Anyway,
Right.
uh but yeah, in terms of uh soap operas too, they're still going, I think. Although some
Oh
may
yeah.
have ended, but they're still going. But I feel like most people like now there's the chance to stream it, maybe? I don't know. I haven't looked up. I haven't seen soap operas like on Netflix, but I'm sure maybe the networks themselves. Or do you still have to like tune in during the day?
I don't know.
Anyway, listeners, if you watch soap operas, let us know.
So let's see. On I googled streaming soap operas,
Mhm.
and according to, let's see, soapoperanetwork.com, um, some of them are available to stream. So, for example, The Bold and the Beautiful uh, is you can watch it weekdays on CBS or anytime on CBS.com, CBS app, CBS On Demand, Paramount Plus. Days of Our Lives is daily on NBC or
Mhm.
on NBC On Demand or Peacock. So yeah, apparently you can. Some of them, like General Hospital, is also available on Hulu. So yeah,
There you go.
according to soapoperanetwork.com, you can watch a lot of them via streaming service.
Okay, there you go. Did you have anything else for 90s nostalgia?
I don't think so.
Okay, so some future fun.
So I've mentioned this before, kind of along with the comment that Maxwell makes about how he often thinks about hiring a nanny. In season 6, the Sheffield family does hire another nanny. Her name is Nanny Bauer. Um, we will see how long she does not last. Um, I won't say anything else. And then the big one is that this is not the last time that Cece and Niles kiss.
Ooh, so
And
do we need to add another kiss count for Cece and Niles?
we can if you'd like to. What I was
Might
going to
as
say is,
well.
I was just going to say they do a lot more than just kiss in season 6, which leads
Woo!
to the revelation um, for everyone learning what CC stands for.
Mhm.
Because CC is not her full name.
So I'm adding that. Cece and Niles kiss count.
I mean, I not to totally dissuade you. I mean, we can do that if you'd like.
For
Um,
now. For
yeah,
now. We can adjust
we're not gonna update it as
frequently.
often, yeah, as our Fran and Maxwell kiss count.
Well,
So,
let's just commemorate this episode.
all right, all right. This was a huge step forward for the relationship between Niles and Cece. In that, even as they're insulting each other, they kiss passionately.
Yeah. I believe like was it season 1 or season 2 that I made the comparison of Cece and Niles with Beatrice and Benedict for Much Ado About Nothing. That kind of
Mm-hmm.
love hate, the quips back and forth, verbal sparring.
Yep. Yeah. It's a good comparison. But yeah, so
Okay.
those are
So
the things I wanted to share.
okay, so it's time for episode rating for lovely listeners. We rate the episodes 1 through 5 lipsticks, but as always, this is our podcast. We make the rules, so we can change them later when we
Right.
do a wrap up, as we have done in the past. But Debbie, it's your turn today.
5.
I
I,
knew it.
I'd give it a 10 if I could. This if someone put a gun to my head and asked me for my favorite episode, this is the episode that always comes to mind because frankly, primarily because of the interaction between Niles and Cece. Because to
Mm.
me, it's just so memorable. The cluck like a chicken, it turns me on, and swine, chicken, like it's just delightful. Um, the Fran and Maxwell interaction is also good. We don't see too much of the kids, but meh.
Mhm.
I just, you know,
In
as I
terms of
was,
couples, yeah, there we get a lot of chemistry and
we do. The one thing that, I mean, I know I mentioned this at the end of season 2, but like season 2 ended with Fran being mugged and
yeah.
like the house being totally ransacked. Um, we don't pick up with that at all. Like we just
Mhm.
carry on as if nothing happened. And that is sort of disjointed, which you notice, like, when you watch in close succession.
Mhm.
Um, so that would be my, like, I guess one complaint about it. Um,
Mhm.
but like as I was preparing for this week's show, I came pretty close to like not watching the show because I know this episode so well. I thought I could do it without like prepping. Like I
Mhm.
wrote the summary without having rewatched it. I just I know some of the dialogue by heart. So yeah, this one gets a 5 from me. How
Mhm.
about you?
Yeah, so I also give it a 5. Like I said, there's that little exchange I'm not too much a fan of, but overall, like again, the Niles and Cece kind of interactions, the chemistry between Fran and Maxwell. And I think to some extent, they totally, like you said, they don't address at all the mugging or like the house being cleared out. But there is still a thread of the kind of flirtation we saw at the end of the season 2 finale between Maxwell and Fran. So I think there's kind of that continuation. And again, kind of continuing with that when Fran's talking about, oh, we never get out without the kids. Maybe we should hire that whole like acting as if they're married type of thing. I think continues on from season 2. So yeah,
Right.
it's a very memorable episode.
Oh yeah.
and yeah, so I'll give it a 5 as well.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Mhm.
Like I knew you were gonna like it, but there was a part of me that's like, oh no, what if she hates it? What if she hates it? Like, I don't know if we could be friends after that. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay, so there was a lot hanging on this,
It's just such a good
unbeknownst
episode.
to me.
It's just such a good episode. I
Yeah,
can't help
and
it.
I must say I'm a sucker for love-hate trope, and romance and stuff like that, so
Well, just hold on to your hat. I mean, you'll have to hold on to it for a while, but
yeah,
hold on to your hat.
we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
The interactions between Cece and Niles, um, we'll see some changes in their relationship. So,
Gotcha.
all right. If you don't have anything else,
Nope.
all right. That's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 50, Franny and the Professor.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.